industrial bones are getting in there.
Yeah, whatever you put in that thing is coming out sausage. Like, and that's just is what it is. Like, it's difficult, and it was especially hard to. Yeah,
it's gonna be my new turn of phrase for when things are going well. Like everything's coming out sausage.
Man, everything's looking to be sausage today. It's difficult. It's even more difficult to try to explain it and then also say I loved it. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to be like, well, it's like they wrote 4.5 minutes worth of music, played it so fast that they fit it into a minute worth of music, and it was gross the whole time. The vocalist sounds like he's being murdered.
Yeah.
And it's great.
Yes.
I don't know. It's very hard to explain to someone. I don't even, honestly, even if you never listen to grindcore and you were into metal otherwise, I still wouldn't be able to do a better job. It's like, extreme metal meets like the Washington fucking punk era of hardcore punk, like Bad Brains.
Yeah.
It's like those two, it's like Cannibal Corpse and Bad Brains together, kind of.
You want to just hit the intro?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Welcome into the 2 Decades Too Late podcast. I am Brad, hanging out with Josh.
What's up?
This is the podcast where Josh and I listen to albums, mostly metal for whatever it's worth, that are turning 20 years old. We rate them based on 4 different parameters, 1 to 5 for each. So a total of 20 possible points from each of us, with a total of 40 points up for grabs. Very rarely achieved. Once?
Yeah, once.
I think once we got a 40.
So far.
So yeah, welcome in. And this week we are reviewing the weirdly amazing album who I didn't know. I'm sure people did, but
shocked me. Shocked the shit out of me.
Same. Terrifyer by Pig Destroyer.
So we'll dive into this later, but I don't even know if I knew who Pig Destroyer was in 2004. But they had been around for quite a while, actually. So, formed in 1997, active for 7 years. They had 2 releases prior to this. Explosions in Ward 6 in 1998 and Prowler in the Yard in 2001. And if those album titles don't give you a hint of where we're headed, you can probably just see yourself out because you don't understand nuance, and the rest of this just won't be for you.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things I marked down. It's like, I am sensitive to things that are... How am I trying to say this? So, I am not a huge fan of Bill Burr's comedy because sometimes I don't know when he's towing the line of making a statement in... I know he's a progressive person, but sometimes his jokes don't land on me like that, and there are comedians that do but I think that's a failure on my part. After listening to this album, I realized I'm not nuanced enough and I need to do better, because sometimes I do think that Bill Burr sounds like he's a misogynist. I don't think that he is. And I think he's just doing he's doing a better job of being progressive in the way that he's delivering it on purpose, and it was above my head. And I'm trying to do better. But I know that there have been times where I'm watching his stand-ups and I can't do it because I'm like, I've heard comedians do a better job of doing this, and still me realizing why they're doing it and how they're doing it. If you are like me with stand-up, but with music, this is not for you, because they are a progressive band and their ideals are very of my own and Josh's. I don't want to speak for you. And they are selling it in a way that is meant to shock your brain.
Yes. And it's all
So
beautifully packaged as a concept, I must say, in a way
I
that
could,
struck me very similar to Blood Has Been Shed.
yes, I could not agree more. So it would be really easy for you to get entwined in this album and find it repulsive.
Yeah.
And I would understand. I got into this album and it actually opened my mind up to more things outside of just this album in the way that I knew I needed to realize I wasn't perceiving things the way that I probably should be at times. This album literally so far on this journey, which we have not been on long, no album has made a bigger impact to me in the time when it didn't have it when it came out than this album.
For sure. Did you dive into the lyrics?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't, because that's kind of like in the way that the reviews are sometimes my thing. I know you're you're not a lyrics guy, but you always seem to check the lyrics. Call back to our last episode.
Yes. Yeah, I am now a lyric guy. I can't fight it much more than that. These lyrics are incredible. They are a lot. But if you
liken them to Black Dahlia Murder, like using that as a litmus test, what are we talking?
Much more than that.
Oh, God.
Yeah, but I think a lot of it to me comes off as a satire as far as what we are as a people, but in a very extreme way.
Yeah.
So again, if you're going to just read the lyrics and you're going to be offended by that on face value, I guess I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong, because I understand. But if you can actually read between the lines of what they're talking about, it's not offensive at all. It's actually quite the opposite. Misanthropic people, nihilists, whatever it is, they're my they're my peeps. Like, and they're selling that in a very extreme manner. But again, face value is not what that is. It's more than that. So,
this album was released later in 2004, October 12th.
Yep.
And we'll talk about it a little bit more, like some of the influences, some of the other bands at the time, but like in some of the reviews at the time, you get references like Cattle Decapitation, their album Humanure, which we're going to talk about later this year, probably either in a jam session or a full episode. So it's kind of, very much a response to things that were going on at the time.
Yeah, it is. And again, like, if you're going to listen to this and you're going to read even the fucking song titles for that matter,
right? Yeah.
Do it with context, please. Because if you don't, I think you'll lose it, and I don't want anyone to lose it, because this is despite being not beautiful in any way, shape, or form on the surface, it's one of the most beautiful albums that I've been introduced to
in a long time. Really well done.
It's incredible. And
I'm almost glad we're finding it 2 decades too late because of that.
I wasn't ready for this.
No.
Now, well, we'll get into it a little more, but yeah, I mean, so yeah, you're right. A little later in 2004, it had. So J.R. Hayes vocals. I mean, he's been in the band since '97. Scott Hall guitar. I assume main songwriter, but I guess my assumption could be wrong there. But he's been in since '97. Which, by the way, Scott Hall. Did you look into that guy at all?
I didn't.
So this dude is like. He also did Agoraphobic Nosebleed since '94.
Okay.
Like, so he's been in that genre for a long time. And no joke, Agoraphobic Nosebleed, I don't know if you've listened to them.
Probably like just heard them back in the day, but they're referenced also in some of these reviews as like a counterpart, or not a counterpart, but a contemporary.
Yeah. So whereas like, I mean, Pig Destroyer's making these really long epics that are like a minute long. But Agoraphobic Nosebleed, most of their songs are like 20 seconds long. Like,
Yeah.
they're very short, and like their album's like 100 tracks. It's insane. But he did the whole thing with fake drum. I know this is a huge aside, but like he used fake drums like way before people were using fake drums, and then you go back and listen to it, you're like, holy shit, that's terrible.
Those are fake drums.
Yeah, those are fake as shit. But Metal Sucks did the top 25 modern metal drummers, and he is in it for writing such good. He's not a drummer, but he writes such cool drums from a fake drum perspective that they put him in the top 25 of modern metal drummers.
That's fucking amazing.
Yeah,
and that's really great context for like what this trio of people are doing with this album. And so to talk a little bit more about what the album is, you mentioned Agoraphobic Nosebleed and their 20-second songs. This is 21 songs that come in at 32 minutes. So just barely around a minute per song.
Yeah.
Which is staggering when you first see it.
Yeah. There's a lot about this album to not like on face value. And that's like, I can't hit that home hard enough, because I'm not saying anyone that listens to our podcast, however many of you are out there, and I love you, and we love you. I don't know if you liked any of the things that we've talked about so far, you could still hate this.
Yes.
No way around it.
I mean, just on the cover alone.
Yeah, the cover is, boy, it's setting a scene, for sure. In a great way, in my opinion. But like, I don't expect you to like Avenged Sevenfold's, Waking the Fallen, and then also like this. And again,
right,
I'm talking about grindcore as if I'm a 6-year-old, because it's just not something I was really ever that into. And maybe that's poor form on my part, because it definitely has a place and is a lot more nuanced than I would have ever given it credit for.
Yeah. And apparently people at the time got it, because when we first started digging into this, one of the first things I do is look at the reviews, and I immediately texted Brad. I was like, have you seen this shit? Like, dude, Lamb Goat gave it a 9 out of 10. All Music, the reviewer, gave it a 4.5 out of 5. The users gave it a 4 out of 5. Like, this was, I don't want to say critically acclaimed, because that would kind of presuppose that it reached a mass audience. But the people who had this at the time loved it, and I was like, we have to find out why.
Yeah, and it's funny because so we talked last week. Which, how are you doing with your New Year's resolutions, people? Did you have them or don't?
Oh yeah,
I don't. I never do. But welcome to the second week of 2024.
Way to not let yourself down.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to have expectations. Fuck that.
Right.
But we decided we are going to do Unearth and then this in a row. Somewhat recently, we had some pivots, which we'll get to later in the year or in our first jam session. But jam. Yeah, and you told me, you're like, the reviews for this are better than Oncoming Storm, and in my brain I was like, that's stupid. I'm like, how the fuck can it possibly be better? And I feel almost bad, because I so get it. I get it. I absolutely do. I understand. I don't love the phrase, if you know, you know, only because of course that's the case. If you don't know something, if you don't know something, then you wouldn't know it. So I know this is like me telling kids to get off my lawn a little bit. I'm not judging people. Yeah, I'm not judging people for using it. I get it. I understand, but it's like,
no worries,
right,
Brad. Let's go.
If I don't, God.
But if you know, you know.
you know, I just gonna throw my phone here in a moment and move past this anyway. But these people knew, man. I didn't get it.
People knew.
But people fucking got it, and good for them. I wonder if the same person who shat all over Oncoming Storm gave this a favorable review, or if they were just like, this is stupid, I don't know why it's fast. It's like, fuck you.
You know what? Anyway. We're going to check it out. After this, we are going to look and see if Herzabeth for Metal Storm did a Pig Destroyer Terrifyer album review. Are you looking right now?
Yeah. I'm looking right now. What was it? Metal Storm? Which, by the way, I've never heard of Metal Storm until...
Me neither.
That's probably a good reason.
I see some things sometimes where people comment on, like, X or Instagram, like, what the hell's this thing doing here in real life? And then somebody will create a fake account for that thing in real life and be like, fuck you, mind your own business. Which is hysterical.
That is hysterical.
I feel like this person
also
did that specifically for the Oncoming Storm. So they're like, Metal Storm, mind your own business, Oncoming Storm.
Oh my God, you're probably fucking right. That's gross. But so it turns out Jeff on Metal Storm gave it a 9 out of 10.
Damn. Jeff knows.
And no one did.
Herzabeth sucks.
How much this is universally loved almost makes me feel bad for missing it at the time. I'm like, because again, when you told me the reviews were better, I was like, that's impossible. And then I'm like, no, of course they are. This is amazing. And like, what was I doing? So I don't want to get...
Yeah, let's dive into what it is, man.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, like, I'll get into the impact at the time because this is kind of along those lines. But like, metalcore at the time was trying to shoehorn bits and pieces from music that they couldn't make into the music they were making. Like, so like we pointed out in the Every Time I Die review, like you hear like I've Been Gone a Long Time and you go, cool, a rock riff is sick in the context of metal. So let's add a rock riff to a metalcore song, even though that's not the point. You know, we're missing the point there. But we did it. And so did lots of people. You know, I mean, shout out to Caleb, who I guarantee that every time he hears any of the things that we're talking about right now, like, remember when we did this? He's right there with us. His bands are doing the same shit, I'm sure. But that's the same thing with the grindcore scene. It's like, I didn't listen to grindcore, but there were enough of our influences that were trying to shoehorn that shit in, like Dead Will Rise, like, and there were those weird bands too, like Psyopus. Like, so I always use the term chaos core. That was like something I used to explain a lot of these bands. It's just mathcore, I guess, is really what it's called. And I don't even know where I got chaos core from because I tried like searching the internet to find someone who actually called it that, and apparently I just made that up.
Sick.
But I guess I don't know. But like, so we had bands that we were influenced by that must have been influenced by this stuff because they were shoehorning that in, just like we were trying to shoehorn the Every Time I Die rock riff in.
So now that you say that, I may have gotten this kind of I may have heard the same thing but gotten it the wrong way around, forgetting that this had been a band since, what did we say, 97. So
yeah.
I kind of characterized it as like this album's pushing a lot of things forward, celebrating some of the gnarliest bits and pieces of what other bands were doing at the time. So maybe I've got that flipped, but I specifically referenced, like you said, Norma Jean's Bless the Martyr, Kiss the Child, which came out 2 years prior to this, but talking about the vocal stylization. Certainly a lot of Dillinger Escape Plan, which you could harken them back to the 90s with Calculating Infinity, and even you know, the Mike Patton vocals on that. So like, what, I don't know if they were kind of borrowing from grindcore, or if Pig Destroyer was kind of taking those bits and making them into this album as like an evolution of a sound that they had previously.
Yeah. And just a side note, because I know we're going to get yelled at for it, Mike Patton wasn't on Calculating Infinity. Just add, he was
Shit,
on
my bad.
No, it's fine. There was an in between album they did between Calculating Infinity and Miss Machine that they did with Mike Patton.
Okay.
Because their vocalist left, and then Greg got on it. Only reason I know that is because it's weirdly one of my favorite albums of all time. I actually have the physical CD of the Mike Patton Dillinger album, which I can't think of the title of right now, but it's very, very good. Anyway, but no, that's a really good point. This being a world I wasn't in, I do tend to think like, I think you can, like if you're going to talk about Dillinger, it's almost like, man, I'm trying to think of a way to describe this. I know how I want to think about it, but they almost are like the college degree version of an insane thing. And like Pig Destroyer is the blue collar, like if you went to college, you ended up with a really good job, and maybe you have a better understanding of the nuances of it. Or if you didn't go to college at all and you just worked your way up, that the Pig Destroyer would be the work your way up, and the like Dillinger would be the college degree almost.
Yeah.
But you're right. I don't know which influenced which. I mean, I guess because Dillinger came out like 98. I mean, it was a long So it's like
they're contemporary for sure. So it's like So I don't know if they're taking pieces out of grindcore and making them like a whole thing. You mentioned specifically like the Southern rock riff, and it immediately made me think of like He Is Legend, which we'll do later this year. Or even later, Maylene and the Sons of Disaster, like that bit of this song became like a defining sound. But for grindcore, it's just a component.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, what I will say is there's no doubt in my mind, again, this is coming from complete ignorance to this genre. So if you disagree, I get it. And I hope you tell me, because I would love to learn. Because I just didn't know. I didn't know. Was outside of my purview at the time. But like, this seems, and we kind of talked about it a little bit, but this seems like someone heard Cannibal Corpse and Bad Brains and was like, I love these things and I'm gonna combine. Well, and I understand that. Look, before you blow me up, I understand that really what it is Napalm Death happened and influenced an entire group of people. So I mean, I get that Napalm Death is probably the start of this whole thing. So I'm not, because I want to say they started in like 81. Like they've been around forever. So they actually predate Cannibal Corpse.
Damn.
But even still, I don't. Yeah. Anyway, so I understand. I get it. But like from my ignorant perspective of hearing it in 2024, that's how it hit me. And so, that's how I felt about it. So again, I'm probably wrong. I know Napalm Death's been a thing forever. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's a Napalm Death in 2005. So if you guys keep us going long enough, maybe we'll get there, and I can prove myself wrong, because I've done that already since we've started this. So it's not impossible.
But you're right though. Like, a lot of people weren't celebrating their influences. You kind of tried to hide them back then. Yeah. To whereas today you can just let it all hang out on your sleeve. Like, no, I'm obviously influenced by these people. How could I not be? It's been 2 decades worth of music, but like this is an album where you'll definitely see the influences celebrated, and more than just celebrated, cohesively mixed, which was very difficult to do at the time.
No, I totally agree. We've talked about that a ton of times. It's just I'm glad that the environment of metal and hardcore have grown the way that it has, because like, yeah, I mean, no one cares anymore. You got bands like Brand of Sacrifice straight up like combining technical death metal and like new metal and not being apologetic at all, nor should they be, and it's incredible. And it's funny how when you don't try to be so judgy and tie yourself down because of your, I don't know, ego, things become much more, beautiful in a way. So no, it's great. Also, we're still talking about Pig Destroyer, by the way. If you can't tell, this album was impactful to us now.
Yes.
We'll get into how much it was at the time, but this blew my mind. And I know this is a tangent of all tangents, even more so than we normally go on, or at least I go on. I ramble a lot, but this just meant a lot and opened up my eyes a lot in a really cool way that I didn't expect it to.
For sure. And I don't have a lot on this, but like, I think I was surprised that they were on Relapse. Like, this album was released by Relapse Records. But now looking at some of Relapse's artists, like, this fits, but it also doesn't fit. I mean,
well, it's funny because, like,
yeah.
No, I'm really glad you brought that up because my first thing was like, that's what I knew about this album. That's like the only thing I knew about this album is that it was on Relapse, because I was always associated that kind of stuff with Relapse, which is kind of funny.
It is funny.
Because they had like a bunch of brutal shit. Like, and Dillinger was on Relapse. Yeah.
Yeah. Mastodon apparently was on Relapse for a little while. I don't think they still are. Yeah.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Like, no, that's funny. I'm really glad you brought that up because that's one of my notes is that I immediately knew it was on Relapse Records. Like, that's just like
sick.
I always associated Relapse with Insanity, more or less, which I don't know why. Yeah. I mean, it must be because Dillinger was on there or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Also, man, the drummer on this album, Brian Harvey, stamina, bro.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Shit. I had that, like, he is just, you are playing for 32 straight minutes.
Just insane. I mean, and like, so when we get into the album a little bit too, like, what I think of when I think of the genre metalcore, which clearly I am ignorant to, and I can't overstate
grindcore?
that, and I'll probably say it grindcore, sorry. Is like the second track, which the intro, we talked about it, terrifying.
Yeah. I was legitimately scared.
Yeah. Like, if you wanted, if you see the album art and you listen to that intro and you're surprised by the rest, then I don't know what to tell you.
You probably don't take social cues well.
Right. Like, so those two things combined, I was ready for, we've used this term before for Blood Has Been Shed, but just dread, just bleak feelings of just unease. I don't know. That's what I thought, and that's what I got for the most part. But track 2, in my mind, is like the quintessential grindcore track. It's 1:16. It's nuts the whole time. He's just screaming bloody murder. And so that, and there's a couple of those, weirdly not all of them. Actually, I wouldn't say most of them fall in that bracket for me. Because, like,
agreed.
Yeah, track 2, definitely just straight up grindcore. Just, that's what it is, period. But then you get into Boy Constrictor.
Yeah. Hilarious.
The amount of times, oh man, saying it out loud is a lot cooler too than.
Yeah.
But like, it's not that. It's got groove. It's got like a part that's kind of catchy, in the context of this. Like, you got a groove riff after a super heavy, fucking almost Cannibal Corpse riff at the beginning, and it's just like you, even on being 4 minutes or so into an album, I mean, not even 3 minutes, I already realized, like, this album is going to give me so much more than I could have ever anticipated.
I actually commented on Boy Constrictor. I don't know how you can fit so much awesome shit into 58 seconds, but man, they nail it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny too, because we talked about it on Darkest Hour, where sometimes you're like, are we on the next track or what are we doing? I assumed, looking at the track listing and the lengths of time, that would happen here, and it didn't.
No.
It didn't. Like, yeah, sure, it blended right into the next song, but I was aware that it changed. Like, because you're fitting so much.
All music said it's one long but constantly changing listen.
Yeah. I mean, it's I was not bored for a second.
No.
And if I may, I think one of the things I noted high level was that if I listened to this just to listen to it, I don't think I ever would have gotten out of it what I got out of it trying to dissect it for this. Like,
right, for sure.
to actually sit down and listen to every single track and try to understand each thing so we could talk about it for an hour. That is what made me fall in love with this thing, because I'm like, this is not just melting your face off and being chaotic. It's so much more than that. It's very thoughtful with how it's constructed, which, again, I know it's my ignorance, but good on them, because it's just not anything I would have guessed.
Yeah, if you can gorge yourself on all your favorite things in a short amount of time and then just be like, you know what, I'm satisfied, and move on with your day, this is where you want to come.
Yep. No, I couldn't agree more. And then you get like, you get to like Thumbsucker, and it's like, this is just like a double bass groove that's not even really, I mean, it is fast in tempo, I'm sure, or BPM, but like, it feels entirely different, and weirdly they add some dissonance and like tritone chords that I would think would be all over the place but aren't. And it's thoughtful. It's very like, we're 5 minutes into this and we're going to add dissonance now, when we could have been doing it the whole time, and maybe if you weren't paying attention you wouldn't have known. Because you could think all of this is dissonant. It's not. It's not
at all.
No.
Like Grave Dancers, the next song, it's just straight up punk at the start to begin, for my ear. Like maybe a little hardcore, but like definitely those punk 2004 Alexandria, Virginia, DC area vibe. Like, yeah.
No, I agree. And actually, I found great. I actually have a lot of notes on Grave Dancer, which is weird, but there's a lot of sludge in it. Like, it's kind of,
there is
getting into the muck. And I pointed out, like, I get like a Melvins vibe from that a little bit, which to the Seattle point, like, I feel like, it's so funny. So here's my logic, and you know, inside baseball sort of situation. When I'm listening to these, I'm noting as I go. And I've got what do we have here? A 3-minute long song, My Stars. B, I point out the Melvins thing. C, I'm like, no wonder this has a music video, because it's a lot more palatable.
For sure.
As far as that goes. D, it's 3 minutes long because half of it is a sound bite.
Yep.
Got it. By the way, if you are out there and you know if that soundbite is from something, it may not be. We talked about it before the episode, that it could just be them doing stuff, which is also fair. But if you do know what that's from, can you please tell me? It sounds fascinating, and I can't find it anywhere. I spent probably an hour trying to find it, and maybe I'm just dumb. Well, I am dumb, but maybe I just missed it.
Yeah, J.R. Hayes, if you're still out there, slide into our DMs and let us know what that's all about, because we gots to know.
Yeah, it's killing me. But yeah.
But then right back at it, Lost Cause, next song, throwing in some different, like, high vocals.
Yeah. And this, and we're at track 7 at this point, right? Out of 21, which is insane. But, like, this is another one which falls into the quintessential grindcore in my mind, like, as far as what I expect from that genre that I'm not super into. So just again, we're 7 songs in, one of which being an intro. I get it, but like only 2 of them in my mind are grindcore, like capital G, capital C grindcore.
I'd give you that,
which is really cool. And then Sour Heart, oh my god, such a good fucking song. It's got that. They do a lot of like the Cannibal Corpse death metal fucking, and it's like
they super do. And we picked up on a lot of those riffs when we were writing songs back in the day. So it got me thinking, like, was somebody in our band into Pig Destroyer? Because there's no way I had heard of Pig Destroyer in 2004. But you're right.
Yeah, I think Jordan was actually.
Oh,
Because he was always the one like bringing the weird, like the grind stuff to the table. Because I think he was really into that shit. And
okay.
and again, I don't know if it was because he was directly influenced by this, or if it was more he was more directly influenced by the bands that were influenced by it. But he was, anytime we wrote a song and we had that like, we did that one fucking riff, and I can't. What's the song that started out with a breakdown? As if like half of them didn't, but the kind of weird like off time breakdown intro that we had. But then we get to that part where it's like that was always Jordan. If we ever wrote a part like that, it was always him. So he was either.
That's true.
Man, you know what? I think he was into them. I'm thinking about it.
And also Emery at the same time.
Yeah, he was an interesting dude.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, he was all over the place. Yeah. Hi, Jordan Guyton. I don't know. You're never going to hear this, but hope you're doing
Shout
well.
out.
Yeah. He was always a good dude. But you're right, because like that's anyway. We'll get to it in the review. The impact at the time is fascinating to me because I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it. Anyway, we get into. So I'm going to go to track 9 specifically. I have a lot of call outs on this one. Towering Flesh.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever heard something as bleak as that clean bridge. Then, I mean, I just want to, you just feel something ominous is upon you. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I loved the scale or progression that they chose, like, because they could have taken it in a very straightforward direction, but they didn't. They took it to a horrible place.
Horrible,
it's almost
in the
like
best possible way.
When you're in a pit and you can see a little bit of daylight, you're like, oh, there's hope. And then you see whoever the captor is peer into that daylight, and you're like, nope, this is not for me anymore.
No, very well said. That sums up that track perfectly. Also, there's a solo. That's cool.
Yeah, which was very refreshing.
It was. Again, that's what this album does. It's just refreshing the whole time. It never gets dull. But like, God, the part after the solo on Towering Flesh, like, I know everyone classifies heavy in a different way, right? But when I think of heavy, I tend to think of like Acacia Strain, where they just have those fucking sledgehammer moments where it's just like you get a pit in your stomach.
Yeah.
The part after the solo in Towering Flesh might be the heaviest moment of music I have ever heard in my entire life. I mean, it was just fucking crushing.
Yeah.
Like, it was a moment. I had a moment in that. I had to rewind that shit. I was like, good Lord. Like, I have anxiety that's so heavy. Like, I feel like the floor is going to fall out from under me. Yeah.
You're being driven into the earth.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you know what happens after? Straight up chaos, fucking grindcore again.
Yeah. So there again, it's like, I don't know who's pulling from who, but we talked about on the As I Lay Dying episode, the kind of mess of things they did at the end of 1,000 Steps. Mm-hmm. So and then just ended the song. So that's this album is taking that bit and they've just stretched it into an entire song. And like, no, we're going to go with this. We're going to celebrate this. We're going to make it a thing in this context.
No, you're absolutely right. And like let's be real though. I don't want to. I'm not going to break down all 21 of these songs because we would be here for like an entire day. But like, just even if you wanted to just skip around and like listen to every third song or something, like you're gonna find new, like Downpour Girl, sludgy as shit.
Yeah,
like I literally put "Get your scowl face ready" because It's just sludge all over the place. Then you got like Soft Assassin, that is a steamroller of a song.
Yeah.
I mean, leaves you fucking in the dust. I don't know. And again, it's just all over the place. Oh, one point, I brought up Dead Will Rise earlier because they were like a very, very straight core, capital M, capital C metalcore band that we used to play with a lot. And then they turned into this like kind of grind metalcore thing. That's another thing. If you're out there and you have their demo before they got signed and released an actual album, because I don't like the production on that album, and you can tell there was a producer saying make your stuff follow a BPM, which I think is warranted a lot, but for them I didn't like it. I think it made it less unique. But if anyone has the demo that came out before that, please send it to me, because Crippled Horses, track 18, man, Dead Will Rise took that drum intro 100%. And like literally he even ends, he's like da 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 da, and it hits a bell when he hits the last snare.
Nice.
They even did the bell on the last snare. Like they ripped it off. So they were definitely influenced by this. No way around it. Impossible that they weren't, because they stole something. But if you have that demo, send it to me. I would really like to have it again. It was very good. So before we get into the reviews, do you have any other high-level stuff? I apparently have a lot more to say about this than I thought I did.
Just to round out the bow, I mean, you said you could skip every third song and get something new, and like we talked a little bit about, later on Maylene and the Sons of Disaster, but you've even got some Southern rock vibe in here, which is totally well done on Restraining Order Blues. Hilarious song title for that use of musicality. Yeah. And then they carry it right into like Carrion Fairy, but then they mutate it a little bit to be just more sinister sounding. It's great.
Yeah. Man, Carrion Fairy specifically had some straight up like hardcore, like terror sort of vibes on that shit, which again it just breaks it up. It's never boring. It's just so much fun to listen to.
It really is.
But review.
I think we should get to the review.
So, album art, right? We got to talk about it. So
we do have to talk about it. I want to hear what you have to say about it.
I think it's doing exactly what they want it to do, first and foremost, and by that I mean being pretty shocking. As far as an album title goes, I think it's fucking amazing. I think there is no other album art I would ever want for this album. I think it's whatever they were trying to do, they nailed it.
I could not agree with you more.
No, if I were judging this album cover even on its own, it's cool art. Like, obviously it's thought provoking. You're gonna wonder why that's happening, and don't try to act like we haven't been doing art like this for like literally thousands of years. We have, so don't be too insulted. But like, it's incredible. I give it a 5.
Yeah, that's the right call. I mean, you can't not give it a 5, even if you like just subjectively don't care for the visual. It is every bit of a 5. So I thought it was perfect. It beautifully complements the music, the overall tone of the album. The fact that you can't see the face is obscured. The fact that the band's name isn't even the prominent feature on the cover of this album. The coloring leading you, like, is it stylized? Is it supposed to imply bruising? Flawless victory in my mind.
Yep, this is a total Neil Gaiman like style artwork pushing the envelope. And I love that you pointed this out, because one of my notes was like, when you know your artwork is what it needs to be so hard that you don't even care if your band name is readable,
Right.
you've done it. And like, yeah, I mean, if you see this for the rest of your life, you don't need to see the band name. You know who it is.
Right. I couldn't not dig further into this, and I'm so glad I was able to find some information on it. So Kerrang actually put out an interview with the band members about 5 years ago for the 15-year anniversary. That's how late to the game we are on this.
Right.
But they talk about it. Some of the go read the article. It's pretty short. It's pretty informative. But the things that are just so cool about how this artwork developed. So it's an image from a porn magazine that one of the band members just had on them. So this is an image of a real person. So you talked about like making artwork this way for thousands of years. You're absolutely correct. Like, this already was a form of artistic expression prior to.
Gotcha.
But it's a photocopy. They were in a Kinko's, and sorry, I want to get this right. Chris Taylor, who did the album artwork or is credited with the album artwork overall.
Yeah.
He just apparently had a way he could use a copy machine as an artistic medium. So whoever was giving the interview said like he could play that thing like an instrument. So like he just took the magazine, made a copy, adjusted the levels, and like that was the framework for what became this album artwork.
Wow.
And he said like when we saw it, we knew like, yep, that's the cover. Has to be.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, like, we're going to have a lot of albums where the album artwork perfectly lets you know what's coming. I don't know if there's going to be one that's more so than this.
It definitely,
I mean, it's perfect.
So far, Blood Has Been Shed would be the closest that I would say.
Yep. Agreed. Totally agreed.
But
this one's probably...
I gotta keep going on with the album artwork, like, just because
Go for
the
it,
last
man.
point I'll make about it. So reading that, I went back and referenced like Prowler in the Yard. Did you look up that album artwork?
No, I did not.
Okay, listeners, if you're gonna type in Prowler in the Yard album artwork, you're gonna want to turn off your safe search, or else it'll come up blurry and you won't be able to see anything. It's not anything.
Holy fuck.
Yeah, that's the right response. It's so much more graphic, in your face. Like, it's so much more macabre or on the nose. Like,
Yeah.
this album artwork, it has that artistic nuance to it. Like, it's not overtly meaning to be gross or over the top. It's a substantial and striking image for sure. But compared to Prowler in the Yard, like, you can tell the development.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Prowler in the Yard, you're getting into Cannibal Corpse Butchered at Birth territory of just straight up gore.
Yes, straight up gore.
But the lot,
exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, Brad, what'd you think
that
of
at your own
the
risk.
production? Hard pivot.
This one, I'm interested to hear what you think. So,
yeah.
Is it good? I'm having a hard time quantifying what good is in a genre like this.
Yeah.
Because, first and foremost, I can hear everything. Levels are solid. There's bass, which I think for this sort of thing, you need a lot of bass, and they did a good job. If you recorded an album like this now, could you make it cleaner and it be more palatable? Yes. I wouldn't want you to. Like, this one's weird. So I've tried really hard to be objective with production, specifically.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Every Time I Die's Hot Damn album is a really big deal to me, but I didn't, as it sits today, I don't think the production is very good. So I pointed it out. I don't necessarily think the production of this is necessarily good,
Right.
quote unquote, but I think it's right.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm torn on this. So if I was being objective, would I say it's good? No, probably not necessarily. But do I want it to be any different? No, I don't. And I don't think I'd want it to be any different now any more than I would have. I mean, at the time, I don't have a lot to compare it to because I wasn't listening to a lot of grindcore, but I'm going to give it a 4 just because it feels right. Like, I can't objectively explain what that means, but I can't give it less than a 4 because I just don't want it to be anything other than what it is.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's certainly a fair thing to rate this on too. You know, there's good and bad, and then there's like, does it fit the overall aesthetic of the intent or whatever. So I too am going to give it a 4, but for different reasons. So I don't think that the mix is stellar overall. I think that the drums are a little too prominent. The guitars are sometimes washed out. One of the reviews, I forget which one, mentions like you may notice the lack of a low end, because they actually don't have. This is funny that you said this. They actually don't have bass on this album. Like, they're just a trio. There is no bass player.
But I thought the guitar player recorded bass.
Scott Hull recorded bass for the Natasha DVD.
Oh, I see.
Which came packaged
fair
with this at the time, and is its own separate thing and weirdly complimentary. I didn't dive too deep into it or listen to it. It's actually longer than the album, which I think is hysterical.
That is funny.
But I'd love to check it out because it seems like kind of the antithesis to the Terrifyer album proper. But getting back to the production.
Do you know how bad... Do you know how much high end had to be in production in 2004 for me to think there was bass on this? Because then,
yeah,
you know what I mean. Like there, we wanted so little low end in music in 2004 that it didn't even bat an eye at it. I was like, oh, there's low end in this.
Yeah,
Jesus, sorry everybody.
But my reason for giving it a 4, apart from those things, is because like a Dimmu Borgir has a certain quality that you need to get a 5. I think they were doing some of the layering with the production. They were adding in some things like the crescendo with the footsteps in the intro.
Yeah.
And some panning of the guitars throughout left and right on certain things. So that's why I bumped it up to a 4. I would have just given it like a 3 overall because meh. But like
you're right.
The extra bits. Yeah. Are what bumped it up to a 4. And if those extra bits had been just a little bit better, it probably would have gotten a 5.
Fair. Super fair. And so the next one we've kind of talked about as far as what I wanted to say. I kind of accidentally already said most of it, but what do you think about Impact at the time?
I had to give it a 1, unfortunately, because like I can't promise you that I had even heard of Pig Destroyer at this point. But then, you know, the more I started listening to the songs and thinking about the context, like I was like, you know, maybe it did get in there tangentially, or maybe they were taking things that I had already heard. And so I gave it a 1 just because I was unaware of the influence, if there was any. Yeah.
So on the first jam session that we had, You gave Dimmu Borgir a 2 because of maybe it influencing you in a roundabout sort of way. That's how I landed on this. I'm giving it a 2,
Sick.
not because I was listening to it at the time. I've made that abundantly clear, but it had to be in there somewhere because we were doing stuff that was akin to some of the ideas on this thing. So, yeah, you're right. And I don't know where that comes from, but it was there somehow. And drum roll for this one, because I can't, there's no way I would have foreseen this outcome at all, but
no.
How much did you enjoy listening to it today?
I had to give it a 5. I thought it was amazing to listen to. Maybe the reviews influenced that, or maybe it was like counter influence. Like, no fucking way that this is gonna be that good.
Yeah.
I don't know how much I'll listen to it in the future. I may never listen to it again. Who knows? But it was an
Right.
absolute blast to listen to this time around.
Yeah, I haven't had that much fun. I don't even know how to quantify how much fun I had listening to it. So it's a 5 all day for me. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, when I sat down at my desk to take notes for this episode, I was not looking forward to it, and I thought it was going to be a chore. By the end of it, I didn't. It could have been 30 tracks, and I would have been totally fine with it. I was just like, it was just so much fun. It was so much fun to listen to. I mean, and you're right. I don't know if I'll listen to it again either. I mean, I have like after my notes, I listened to it like 4 or 5 more times. Yeah. But like, it's just, it is proof that whatever you think you might have a subconscious bias towards things artistically, and sometimes it's really good to try to push that aside and open up to things that you might not have otherwise, because it was great. I thought it was going to be terrible, and instead it was maybe the most fun I've had so far in our podcast of listening to an album and getting to know it. Now, it helps that this is one of the only albums so far. There's going to be many more this year, guys. We have stuff that I have never heard.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to that. But this is the first album that I hadn't really listened to. And if that's the best thing I get out of doing this podcast, then it's a win, because it was great.
Yeah, for sure. So what'd we end up at overall?
So we've got album art total 10, production then verse now 8, impact at the time 3, which is actually strangely better than I even expected. And enjoyed listening to it 10. No joke. So that gives us a total of 31, which is the same as Unearth Oncoming Storm.
That is incredible to me.
Yep. I can't believe it.
So I'm so curious to know, like, if we had heard it back then, what our feelings would be.
You know, that's funny, because, like, again, I don't think I would have liked it as much if I wasn't listening to it for in this format. Like,
I'm with you.
Being able to just literally try to take every single moment in and not just treat it as one blanket piece of music is what made me love it. I was like, yes, if you're just going to listen to this in the background, it's probably going to sound like a mess and chaos the whole time. But if you really want to sit down and dissect it and really pay attention to what these dudes are trying to do, I mean, it's masterful, honestly.
Yeah, I agree completely.
So I probably would have hated it at the time, to be honest, or I would have probably wanted to like it because it would probably be cool to like it. Yeah. But I wouldn't have gotten what I got out of it today. Now, second episode of the year. Second episode with the new thing that Josh came up with. So what is your favorite song on the album?
Oh, man. So I'm going to say, since an intro doesn't count, because the intro is just perfect.
It's amazing.
But
it's perfect.
It's not a song. Yeah.
No.
I'd have to go with... where is it? Which one is it? I can do this.
Also, just while you're doing that, to point out the differences between Unearth and this, whereas Aries, I felt like you could just throw in the trash, and I don't even get really why it was there. The intro on this album, despite not being a quote-unquote song, and I agree with you, it's not, it has to be there. Yeah. It's essential.
It is, absolutely.
Anyway, go ahead.
I gotta go with Grave Dancer for favorite song.
Yep, that was my number 2. Actually, it was my number 1 at first. But anyway, Boy Constrictor is my favorite.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Yep, and honestly, there could have been like 10. That's how varied this thing is. Again, if you listen to it just straight through and you're not paying attention, it's going to sound the same. It's not. I promise you it's not. Give it the time. It's just so it's so interesting and so all over the place. It's just awesome. Everything
That
has something
that's
different.
yeah, that's well said. Like if you're gonna give this album a try, and you really should, give it
Yep.
an honest listen. Pay attention. If you're not going to, you might as well just put a little bit of gravel in a blender and put it on in the background,
Right.
and then do
Yeah.
something else.
Unless I guess you're super like in the know of grindcore and you have you know how like some people like, how do you understand what those people are saying when they're screaming? It's like, because
Yeah,
I've been
that's
listening to it
fair.
since I was 9 years old. Maybe
That's
you
fair.
can just hop in here and totally get it. And if you do, my kudos, my head is off to you. You're ahead of it. Good for you. But I wasn't, and I needed to pay attention. If you are like Josh and I, and this is not your cup
Mere
of tea,
mortals.
generally, yes,
Yeah.
please give it the time it deserves. And maybe you'll still hate it. That's fine. I'm not gonna say this is for everybody. It's not.
Totally
just
get it.
isn't.
Yeah.
No, totally get it. If your reviews are 1
One.
no, just 4 1 then yeah, I understand. I'm not gonna argue with you about it. I get it. This is not. Maybe you look at this album art and you're like, I'm not fucking listening to that. Fair.
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah. Like I get it. Totally understood. I'm not gonna argue. I'm not gonna push back. But if you are
Nope.
gonna give it a listen and you're gonna try, please try wholeheartedly, because I do believe that this piece of music deserves it.
Absolutely. And that's a great place to end. So with that, I've been Josh. That's been Brad, and we've been
What up?
2 decades too late.